Whilst I do enjoy piecing together builds that lean more towards the enthusiast side of things, I do understand that not everyone has $500 or more to splurge on a PC, but still want to scratch the surface of PC gaming to see whether it's something they want to invest in. Well, look no further, this is a $350 PC that was still allowed to participate in the action. Hi everyone, my name is Proto, and today I'm going to be bringing you a $350 build that will play games pretty nicely at 1080p. I understand most of you are going to compare this build monetarily to say the consoles, and whilst it does play games better than the consoles by a long shot, I personally wouldn't invest in a PC at this price. The reason is that over a longer period of time, the monetary benefits of PC gaming such as no membership for online gaming, cheaper games and cheaper peripherals really do lend themselves nicely, and so if you were to spend a little bit more and maybe look at a $500 build, you would probably get more out of it. I understand not everyone is in a position like that, and so here's my first truly budget PC build. Before we get started, I do want to mention that this is just the PC and does include the OS, mouse, keyboard or monitor or things of that nature, so you will still need to get those if you haven't got them lying around. Looking for geek and gaming collectibles? Loot Crate is essentially Comic Con in a box. Every month there's new goodies from collectibles to apparel to tech gadgets and other epic gear. Check out the link in the video description to learn more. Anyway, for the CPU of the Intel Pentium G4400 3.3GHz dual-core processor, costing $57. Now this is a great CPU at the budget option because the next step up will be an i3, and that costs over double the price of this. As mentioned, the CPU has 2 cores and 2 threads, and so whilst it will lag behind end games that are CPU intensive, not many of them actually are. It has pretty high single thread performance, and in regards to cost benefit analysis, this is probably your best $60 CPU. Most of the common games played today are GPU intensive, not CPU intensive, and so this CPU is great because it's an excellent starting point that won't bottleneck the graphics card. Also, this Intel chip is energy efficient and still runs pretty cool on the stock cooler. Whilst it does have integrated graphics, ignore that, you won't actually need it, but if you want to, you do have the option to upgrade to a Skylake or Kaby Lake i3, i5 or i7 in the future if you wanted to, so no worries there. As for the motherboard, we've got the ASRock H110M HDS Micro ATX LG1151 motherboard, costing $43. Now for the price, this is a pretty decent board with all the features you could possibly want in such a budget build. It's got 2 memory slots supporting up to 32 gigs of DDR4 2133MHz RAM, and since MOBOs don't affect FPS, going with this, which is one of the cheapest options available, will save us money, which we can spend on other things that actually will affect performance, such as the graphics card. It is in a micro ATX form factor, and so we have gone with a smaller case as well. Not quite console size, but it is still pretty small. You can connect it with 4 drives, and as for back panel connectors, you get 2 PS2 ports, 2 USB 3.0 ports, and 4 USB 2.0 ports. You also get Gigabyte LAN and 3 audio connectors, nothing special there. But again, for a budget option, it's all we need. For memory, I went with the Kingston HyperX 4A Black 8GB 1xGB DDR4 2133 memory, costing $38. For a few dollars less, you could get ones without heat spreaders, but quite honestly, I think it's worth the extra bit. This is the same type of RAM that I have in my system, and we've gone with 1 stick of RAM because it will allow us to add an extra one in the future if we want to. 8GB is enough in games, and going with 1 stick over 2 won't have any negative consequences on gaming performance. And whilst we are on a tight budget, I can't fit in an SSD, though I do still think that a 1TB drive is really important, so as a result we've gone for the Western Digital Caviar Blue 1TB 3.5-inch 7200 RPM internal hard drive, costing $50. Now a 1TB hard drive is plenty for games and OS, programs and all the other files you're going to be storing on this. If you decide that 1TB isn't enough in the future, you can still add a few extra drives to satisfy your concerns for larger storage, up to 4 actually. Now for the meat and gravy of the build, we have the GPU. Now for this I want the Gigabyte Radeon RX 462GB WINDFORCE OC video card, costing $108, and that would be our best choice. Now this is on the new Polaris architecture on the 40nm FinFET process, and in terms of relative performance, it's a little weaker than GTX 950 and DX11 titles, but that said, it's still significantly cheaper than the GTX 950 and still performs the same in some DX11 titles and better in DX12 titles. But yeah, this won't be reaching 1080p 60fps in demanding games, but lowering some settings to high, you shouldn't have a problem with it. And what you'll get is a great and consistent experience at 1080p, not 720p on medium and not 900p on medium either. This card has 2 gigs of VRAM, which is a little lower than the other cards, but it's still enough for 1080p, and well, the more expensive cards such as the GTX 950 and 2GB R7370, yeah, I know, the older generation, they also still have 2 gigs. The card supports AMD Eyefinity and FreeSync, as well as DX12 Vulkan, Virtual Super Resolution and HDMI 2.0. This card supports up to 3 monitors through its 1 HDMI, 1 DVI and 1 DisplayPort connection. And as for Raptor, I'm going to straight up say that last time I used it, it was nowhere near as good as Shadowplay, and I'm assuming that's still how it is today. But it's still usable. Raptor allows you to record gameplay on your PC. You can record games at 1080p with the ability to record at a pretty decent bitrate. One of the features I love in general is the flashback feature, which works much like the Elgato time shift feature or Nvidia's Shadow Record. If I were you, I would rather use OBS instead of Raptor, since Raptor itself does have problems with inconsistent frame rates and a shitty encoder. Raptor used the dedicated HEVC encoder on the GPU to encode the gameplay you just recorded, whilst not affecting FPS all that much. At least, not like Fraps. As for the case, we have the Fractal Design Core 1000 USB 3.0 Micro ATX Mini Tower case, costing $25. This case is also in a smaller form factor, meaning that it's less obtrusive on your desk or wherever you put it. There's 2 external 5.25" bays for things like a DVD reader, if people still buy those, fan controllers, or a hard drive caddy, which I recommend you do. You also have 2 3.5" bays for hard drives and USB 3.0 headers, which is a standard. This is a budget case, so it's missing things like proper cable routing and proper fan mounting, but for a budget case, we can't really get anything better. And lastly, we have the EVGA 430W 8+ certified ATX power supply, costing $34. You should know that as far as I can tell, the GPU doesn't require any external power connectors, so all the power is from the PCIe slot. This power supply will be enough for this build, and whilst we're on a very tight budget, the GPU will accompany that very nicely, and it's enough for our purpose. Anyway, hopefully this build did help you out if you're looking to drop say $400 at Christmas on a new rig with peripherals and an OS. If you like this video, then give it a thumbs up, and subscribe to see more content like this. If you do need any help with PC gaming, or you just built your new rig, tweet me that shit. Until next week, this has been Proto, adios!
Back from the dead.